For this underdog token, and I'm going to call it an underdog because it is very probable, and I want to stress this, it is very probable this guy is the best designed scam in crypto history. I can't discount the possibility this is the case. So, this is not an endorsement or me advocating for you to invest in this cryptocurrency. I do suggest you look at it and make your own decision. However, I'm being very clear. It can only be one of two things. Either it's the best built scam in possible history for cryptocurrency, or it is totally legit. And it just happens to be that the way that they did it was sketchy and scammy, but they really had the best of intentions. I can't tell you. All I know is the way that some of these work and what I'm seeing screams out loud scam. It might not be scam. It might be straight on the up and up. It might be nothing but legit. It might be clean as a whistle. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not trashing them. If they want to come on the show and they want the smoke, I would love to talk to these guys. I would love to talk to these guys because as I see it, if it's truly a legitimate project, I think it's compelling. But I can't say that it is or isn't. And because I can't say for confidence that it is or isn't, it makes me a little bit nervous. That doesn't mean that it's not. And that's why I would love to open invitation, and I will at them on social media. Open invitation to have the conversation. Let's talk it out. I would love to help you. If you truly are legitimate, I would love to help you, give you an additional platform above and beyond what you got, because it's a compelling thing of what I see. It's just I'm not sure what I'm looking at. This token's called MetaDM. Site is metadm.org. If you look at this token, first of all, some background. Facebook at some point, and that guy's an idiot, Zuckerberg, they announced that they were going to change Facebook to Meta. And it's going to be an overtime process. It's going to take some time. They're not really there yet. They don't know what it means. They don't know what it's going to look like. As part of this, they had toyed with the idea of creating a cryptocurrency. It's actually going to be a stable coin, I believe. And then they backed off of it because they couldn't make the regs work in their favor to, keep it clean. And so Meta is still kind of out here. When Zuckerberg gave that announcement, you instantly saw all these different companies jump on the bandwagon about the so-called metaverse. There's past episodes where I've talked about the fact that metaverse is not a new thing. You're hearing about it more now just because that idiot talked about it. But metaverse has been a thing for the longest period of time, all the way back to and including Second Life, which is a game that's old. It's old, but it was the first example of what metaverse could be. And I'll repeat some of the stuff I said during that episode. Second Life, when that thing launched, people felt it was a fad. Nobody really bought into it. And then over time, people started to get a little bit more interested because of the control and the flexibility and the fact that you could basically create your own world. And there are maps. You can literally create your own maps from connected to other people's worlds. And you build your home and you can do all this stuff, but all these brands started buying into it too. So inside of there, you had clothing stores and food stores and shopping and all this that you could purchase all these things that if you were to look back in time were kind of the earliest phases of what we now take for granted as an NFT, because they were a digital representation, just a bunch of numbers and digits of a tangible something. It could be artwork, it could be a vase, it could be something. And then you could decorate your home, or you could work, like you actually could work a job there. I'm telling you right now that what they're talking about now with, metaverse, it's not new. It's not. It's been tried. And now here's where the climax of the story comes in. Metaverse has failed every single time it's been tried. Why? Because while it sounds good to kind of distract people temporarily in a virtual world, anybody who's a gamer might remember, or an anime fan, might remember there was a series called Dot Hack. And Dot Hack, that was what it is there's a game, the world, CyberConnect was the developer, and the world. And you would put on these glasses. And this is sounded familiar with all the Facebook and the Oculus and all that. That's what it was talking about. You put this on and you have a virtual avatar in this digital world, and you're going out and you're fighting bad guys and all this. That's the description of metaverse. I challenge anybody to present a single evidence of that happening in the real world. where you have that kind of true to life, real feeling of a thing other than what we have. If you look at mixed reality, Microsoft predominantly is you put on the glasses and you're seeing a virtual world and you can navigate the virtual world and you can somewhat touch the virtual world, but there's no tactile sensation. There's no smell. There's hearing, yes, but you're hearing digitally, artificially created things. Yes, I understand what Morpheus said. Electrical signals interpreted by your brain. I got it. But anybody that's been in mixed reality knows it wears off. You get weaned off of it. It doesn't last. It's kind of fun for the moment and then it wears off. Augmented reality. So now think Pokemon Go. You're taking digital representations of something and you're overlaying it on the real world. At that point in time, when Pokemon Go first launched, you had tons of people walking around looking like zombies, chasing fictitious creatures all over the streets, people leaving work to do this. It was a big thing. Now what? You don't see that hardly anymore. You might see it overseas, as in not in the United States. You don't see it nearly. When that launched, the United States was all over that garbage. It wore off because it was a fad. That's the problem with metaverse. It sounds good, but until you can get us to a world like you saw in Star Trek The Next Generation with an actual holodeck where you actually put there and you don't have to wear glasses and you can navigate it and there's actual tactile and there's smell and senses are being employed, until you can get to that, you don't have a metaverse. We know this. Common sense tells us this because we're not at that level of advancement. Now, if we accept what I just said is true, that we're not at that level yet, think of how long it took us to get to this point. Second Life is over a decade old, and it took us this long, and we haven't made significant advancements towards anything close to a holodeck. Not anywhere close. They've tried, but we're nowhere close. Then you got to think about, do we really focus on that versus real world problems, right? And so metaverse has become a buzzword, but it's also kind of become a byline, a pitch, right? That a lot of companies are jumping on. MetaDM took that concept and they built, at least from what I see, what I believe is the only evolution that they could do around, quote, metaverse that allows for competition in a space that's really evolved and mature, that being social media. Now, the reason I gave you that preface and I took so long to give you that preface is important because in order to understand what they're talking about here, you've got to set aside the snake oil that they sold you on metaverse because it's never going to be a thing. We can do digital avatars all we care to. We can do NFTs all we care to. We can do things like Minecraft and create a character and we can do all that we care to. We shouldn't be calling that metaverse because it's not truly metaverse. It's just games. It's just games or art or whatever. But if we rethink what metaverse could be, now MetaDM becomes a lot more compelling. If you look at their site, I again encourage you to take a look at it. MetaDM.org. I'm going to summarize. And again, if they're listening, I would love to have you on the show because if I butchered anything, I want you to correct it direct to the investors. What it looks like they're trying to do is they're trying to create an alternative to social media that uses, in this case, mixed reality technology. So how you would think about this, if you're on Twitter and you think about Twitter Spaces, today, Twitter Spaces is nothing more than a chat room that happens to have voice to it. And that's fine, right? You can see the little avatars of people and that's all good and no problem. But what they were trying to do here in concept, so none of this exists yet, but in concept, is to be able to take that room space concept of people coming together in a social media forum and be a digital representation, but you're now in a room together and you're hearing and you're talking and you're interacting. Does that have any intrinsic value to the business side? Maybe, maybe not. Does it have intrinsic value to the consumer side? I would say yes, to some degree. And I'll get to that in a second. They have a white paper and you're going to hear me celebrate because their white paper, not only is it a PDF, it's from a structure perspective, not an information, but a structure perspective. arguably one of the best white papers I've seen, Hercules. A lot of time was spent on the white paper to accomplish one thing. They first of all, they do the rubric very well. They don't do it exactly like I like it, but they do it very well in telling them, look, this is why we're here. This is what it's supposed to do. Here's kind of imagery of what we're thinking about, so you can kind of get a sense of what's the concept behind this. This is where a lot of them struggle. When they talk about, I'm going to build an exchange, and they can't show you any images about what that means. Here, they're actually showing you images of here's what we're thinking. Of course, all of these are subject to change, but at least they show you something. Then they talk about rewards. So beyond the actual utility, there's actually a rewards mechanic, multi-level rewards mechanic. They're not unrealistic rewards. They're not going to try to change the world, like some of the ones that have six-figure APYs. But the fact that you can stake it and earn rewards goes to the passive income. And that's the current positive thing to do, is use positive income. So if nothing else, you can use it as an additional avenue for passive income. Now you can rethink your investment strategy, potentially. You can say, I'll invest in these 8 projects that all generate passive income for me. And rather than worry about their price or buying and selling them, they're just generating passive income for me. The downside of passive income by itself is it still relies on volume. Relying on volume takes popularity. It takes constant popularity, and it's the hardest thing for a token to sustain, is how do I make sure that there's constant activity happening? When you have a staking mechanism, you're decreasing the activity. But if you combine that with their tool that they've got for social media, now you kind of put it in big picture, right? You've got, as people use this platform for their social media, their chats, their voices, following, all the activities. If you think about the billions and billions of transactions that happen on Twitter all the time, or even garbage Facebook or Instagram, if you could tokenize that traffic, if you could turn that into something that keeps the volume going for your token activity, now it solves the problem when you go to stake your actual coins of making sure that you're constantly getting passive rewards. So the fact that they combine the two appealed to me very strongly. I had one down point, one thing I didn't really care for. I understand why they did it. I didn't really care for it because I think that it creates the rat race. They have it's got arguably the lowest, I think, supply in all of cryptocurrency. I can't think of any other crypto that has the lowest supply of this one. 33,000 tokens. 33,000 tokens. I understand why they thought that was a good idea, but 33,000 tokens of, I don't know, maybe, obviously price movements are going to be very strong because it's heavily constrained. But I think when you talk about something like this, where it's going to be doing social media transactions, empowering that, and staking and all the other stuff, I'm not sure this one's going to be super sustainable in the big picture, but because it's constrained inventory, it should go to the moon. Obviously, it literally just launched. So based on the graph that I see, it is in concert with what I would have expected with this kind of supply. I'm saying that I'm not sure that I'm sold on this low of a supply. It's not that you shouldn't have a constrained supply, but I also think you got to be realistic with that constraint. Like, I don't think it should be so dramatically low as to spike it to, because what happens is if it's so low like this, then you get to a point where now it's not sustainable for people to buy into it. They're just going to see a high price, and then they're going to go another way. They're going to go to another token that's cheaper, which is usually one of these dog coins. And I wouldn't want to see that either. So I personally am not a fan of the supply. That's the only thing that I saw that was a little bit concerning. They might be able to pull it off, but with this kind of a price and with this kind of a supply, to me, it feels like you're almost forcing yourself into a corner that your social media platform and tool has to succeed. Because if it doesn't, or you don't launch on time or whatever, I think you're going to get such volatility. It's going to be a turnoff for anybody who's a chart watcher, because they're going to see such volatility and they're going to just overreact and go another way instead of buying into the project. And I wouldn't want to see that, because again, if it is legit and it is serious and they're going to do this thing and they actually have some prototypes and things ready to go, and it's not going to be a crap out, then I do think it's a good thing for society to have this kind of an alternative tool for consumers. So, MetaDM, if you're intrigued by something different, it's a different tool, it's a different utility, it's a different kind of thing, and the things that they're talking about scream again that we're trying to solve a problem, whatever that problem is defined as by them. So that's number one. But at the same time, the reason that I gave you the preface up front about metaverse, calling themselves MetaDM, I understand why they did. I don't agree with that either, because it's too close to Facebook and Zuckerberg and Meta. And I think they should have chosen a different name, something that was a little bit less associated with Meta as the name. You can have the byline say the Metaverse IM Network. That's cool. I think they should have picked a different name that stood out in a crowd. I think this stands out as a tool. I'm concerned about that name, and then I'm concerned about the inventory. Everything else is compelling and very intriguing to me, and something I think is worth keeping an eye on, if nothing else. The price is going to be jumping like crazy. So if it is something that you do want to get into, then you may want to take a look at it sooner rather than later. And unfortunately, my podcast is going to publish a little bit late. This snippet is going to go to YouTube because I want as many people to hear this, because I want you to look at it. I want you to look at it. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't just trust me blindly. You should hold it, look at it, and take your own look and make your own decision. And again, it is entirely possible this is the best, most elaborate scam you can think of. That is entirely possible and plausible. Here's why I don't think it is, and I'll wrap this up. On their site, they have the team and the roadmap. And if you look at the team, these are people that have LinkedIn pages. And with the LinkedIn pages, these are pretty well-known people. These are not celebrity likes, but they're well-known people in the space, I should say. But you've got LinkedIn people, you've got strong people behind the team, and they're open about who they are and who they represent and what they do. They're not hiding behind things. And they don't screen car salesmen like with Seifu. This to me seems like a serious team. So I'm not concerned that the team would be scammers. That doesn't feel like it at all. If anything, this would be something where they would just not make it work and it would fail, and then they would just abandon it, would be the biggest risk. I'm not saying that that's what would happen. I'm saying that would be the only risk. I don't see scammer here. However, I need a caveat. MetaDM.org. It might be the best built scam ever in crypto if I'm reading it wrong. But when I look at it, I don't see scam. I see that they're a good team. I also see that it may be overly ambitious, but I see if they can pull it off, this could be a game changer. Take a look at it yourself, metadm.org. Let me know what you think on it. But I personally think it's something worth to take a look at. I wish that inventory wasn't so low.